Hey Keith, let's talk to football here. Districts, we have narrowed the field down. We're in the second week of district playoffs now. We're going to start with Class 3A. We've got three teams that are still alive in 3A. You've picked one where we've got two clashing. Cocalico Eagles versus the Catholic Crusaders.
Yeah, it's going to be I think it's going to be probably the best quarterfinal matchup in the 3A bracket.
Yeah.
You look at Catholic's record and you think, well, they're 6-5. How good can they be? But they're a completely different team, than what they were even a month ago. It's interesting. They've kind of reinvented themselves three different times this year.
We were talking about that, yeah.
They started at 0-3. They couldn't do anything offensively. Then they moved Evan Purvis back to quarterback. They became more of a vertical passing team with him. I mean, he's really come on. But now, in the last 3 or 4 weeks, they've kind of rediscovered their power running game with senior running back Trey Miller, who really came out of nowhere. I mean, in 3 weeks now, he's had 670 yards and 11 touchdowns.
Wow.
He had 37 yards in the preceding 8 weeks.
Wow.
And, last week they knock off Lampeter Strasburg 49-21. He had 309 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns.
It's Roman McClay numbers, yeah.
Yeah, he pretty much has carried them over the last month or so. Cocalico, on the other hand, is with the exception of the bump in the road against Manheim Central, in the middle of the year, they've just been consistently killing everybody they played, for lack of a better term. They knocked off Gettysburg last week. That was another mercy rule game. I think they've had 8 or something like that in their 11 games. So they really haven't even had a whole lot of competition beyond the Manheim Central game and maybe 1 or 2 others. So yeah, it's going to be a really, really interesting matchup in my opinion.
I don't think it's going to be a mercy rule in this game.
No.
Who do you like here and why?
I'm still leaning slightly toward Cocalico. Really tough game to pick though, because you look at Catholic's 6-5 record. With the exception of last week, that was all against Quad A competition.
That's a good point.
And they've
play a Section 1 schedule.
Yeah, they play a Section 1 schedule. They played Wilson tough. They only lost that game by 7. Their other loss since the 0-3 start was to Hempfield, and Hempfield's playing really good football right now. So Catholic, I think, may have a slight edge in strength of schedule if such a thing exists.
Right.
But I still, like I said, I like Cocalico. I like what they do offensively. I think it matches up well with what they can do against Lancaster Catholic. Catholic, they're okay on defense. They're not blowing anybody out of the water. And I think Cocalico, if they can establish that ground game that they're famous for, that they can keep Catholic's offense kind of in a spectator's role and really chew up clock and kind of control the game that way. I really did agonize over the choice, though. It's going to be a very, very competitive game, I think. And it won't stun me if Lancaster Catholic goes up there and pulls off an upset. I still got to stick with Cocalico. I think consistently all year they've been really putting it together.
Have.
Not that you could read too much into this, but they do have one common opponent. That was Governor Mifflin. Governor Mifflin shut out Lancaster Catholic 28-0 in week 2. Week later, Cocalico just hammered them, 59-7 it was a week later. That was a long time ago. Catholic's a completely different team now. But, just throwing that one out there.
You mentioned it's a credit to the Catholic coaching staff for not being so headstrong to stay with the one quarterback if it wasn't working or stay with the ring. And they've kept tinkering and changing things instead of being headstrong. And you're seeing some of the fruits of that right now. Will this be a high-scoring game is my last question for you. It sounds like it's leading to this could be a shootout.
It could be if both teams are able to do what they want to do offensively. There is that potential, yeah.
We've got one more game to talk about in this classification. It's the Manheim Central Barons. Oh, yeah, 11-0 Barons at home again with the game here. Who do you like in this one?
Yeah, they got Susquehanna Township. They're a 10 seed out of the Mid-Penn Keystone Division. Susquehanna Township's a really hard team to get a read on. They haven't really been consistent at all this year. Now they've kind of put it together lately. They've won 3 of their last 4 games. They knocked off Hershey last week, 33-15. That's the second time they beat Hershey in 3 weeks. They've got good athletes. They're fast. They have a lot of big plays on both sides of the ball. They're explosive, really, on both sides of the ball. I just don't know if they have the 4 quarters of perfect football they're going to need to knock off Manheim Central. obviously, Central, they're averaging over 400 yards and 567 points now they've scored in 11 games, which is just ridiculous numbers. And the thing that I think you're worried about if you're Susquehanna Township is Central had its wake-up call last week because they beat Garden Spot, but it was only 34-17, and there were a lot of furrowed brows on the Manheim Central sides in that game. And I think everyone was expecting another blowout there. Garden Spot played them tough. Central looked uncharacteristically sloppy, whereas Garden Spot, I think, played probably its best effort of the year. Now, the other thing is, in spite of all that, Central still put up 34 points and won by 17. But they had a good battle, and I think, after 3 weeks of the preceding 3 weeks beating their three opponents 191-0, maybe that's exactly what Central needed is a smack in the mouth and, hey, wake up, you're in the playoffs.
Well, almost like Mike Williams had said afterwards to the reporters, you guys were saying, go ahead, we want to be hit. We want to be hit a little bit. We haven't been hit in a while. We won a game, and they maybe got a little bit of the rust off. I still don't think they've been really challenged.
Not since Cocalico.
No.
And maybe LS gave them a bit of a game too.
LS might have challenged them more than Cocalico did.
Yeah, I think it was an ideal scenario for Mike Williams and his staff because they won it not easily, but it was never really in danger.
Yeah.
But they did enough sloppy things where they can spend the whole week with the kids like, hey, you got to focus, you got to do this. So I think it was ideal for him. They got to win, but they have lots of stuff to motivate the kids about.
Okay, motivation. You said that. Didn't they lose to Susquehanna Township last year in districts?
They did.
Cocalico was that way this year. They lost to Cocalico last year, and you see how they came out against Cocalico. Will that be a factor?
Yeah, it might be. You never know what high school kids are going to use to motivate themselves. But yeah, Susquehanna Township did knock them off in the quarterfinals last year. That was 27-17 that game. So it was a fairly good game. Different Susquehanna Township team though, and a different Central team, frankly. I think they're a lot better this year.